By Dr. Rosanna Allen-Khan, MP. Rosanna is the Shadow Minister for Mental Health, a real priority for our union and so many of our members. And as well as being a Member of Parliament and the Shadow Minister, Rosanna is also a medical doctor, working in St George's Hospital in Tooting, in the constituency she now represents. And whilst our former Prime Minister was, as we know, failing to stick to his own government's rules during COVID, Rosanna worked shifts in A&E, saving lives. She is somebody who lives her values and our values, and we're very pleased to welcome you to address our conference. Rosanna, please take the floor, and you are very, very welcome.
Thank you, conference. I am thrilled to be here. I'm Rosanna Allen-Khan. I am proud to serve the people of Tooting as their MP, and I am the Shadow Cabinet Minister for Mental Health. But most proudly, I am an NHS worker, like so many of you in here today. Thank you. And I want to thank you for all that you do, all the hours that you put in, even though you've been going through your own personal daily struggles. You are an incredible, powerful force for good. Even before being here in this hall this morning, I was talking to some London members, and they were telling me about some of their proud achievements that couldn't be done without taking the fight where it needs to go and winning. You all show up for people every single day and give of yourselves endlessly. So I'm going to start my speech today by asking you to give yourselves a massive round of applause. We have come such a long way when it comes to talking about mental health. But how many people here today have faced poor mental health and been reluctant to call their boss and tell them? How many people have said they have a migraine or a bad tummy rather than phoning into work and admitting the truth? Mental health is core business for trade unions. And as a proud NHS doctor, and whenever I'm able to, I put on my scrubs, I turn up and do my shifts at my local A&E, and I want to talk a bit about our NHS today in my speech. But firstly, I want to say something about UNISON. Oh, Christina, under your leadership, UNISON continues to be a great force for justice and equality. It's 30 years since UNISON was created from the merger of other unions. Over 1 million members, like you here today, joining hands to build a better workplace and a better world. For 30 years, UNISON has fought for its members, helped countless workers, and helped working people claim a fair share within the economy. But you've also campaigned for greater equality in our society, leading the way on anti-racism, on tackling sexism and misogyny, on fighting homophobia and transphobia, and campaigning for rights and access for people with disabilities. My mum is Polish, and my father Pakistani, and I was born in Tooting. And I know the cruel sting of racism. I've experienced everyday sexism in the House of Commons, and I'm also ashamed to say, in the NHS as well. I see working class kids in my community denied opportunities, being told not to try, being kept in their place, just like I was, told that a girl like me would never amount to anything, and I should never reach for the stars, and I was never going to get into medical school. When we were growing up, my mum worked 3 jobs just to feed us kids. Winters without heating, just about surviving. At night, we heard our mum as she cried through the bedroom wall, and that sound will always haunt me. Why? Because there was no union to fight for her, no one on her side. Tonight, here in Liverpool, all over the UK, there will be kids burying their heads in their pillows to muffle the sound of their mum's tears. Don't tell me we don't need unions. That's why the trade union movement is so vital. It's why the struggles for pay and conditions are essential. And we can see from economies without vibrant trade unions, workers get swindled every time, all of the time. And we saw that during the pandemic, didn't we? While we gave our all to patients and their families waiting in line for PPE, Tory donors were lining their pockets, millions siphoned off to their mates in the VIP fast lane. And that's why the struggle for social justice is so important to me, to end the discrimination and prejudice that hold people down and serve only the privileged. Whenever I see a Tory minister attacking the unions, I know you're doing something right. They're scared of your power. They're scared of your potential. And I know they represent a different class, a different set of values. And I know, in the words of the old song, I know which side I'm on. And conference, it has never been more important to pick a side. We're experiencing a cost of living crisis which is hammering the poorest hardest. Children who shivered through the winter under blankets because their heating was turned off. People turning up to food banks because prices in supermarkets are soaring. People sold a dream of home ownership, staring in disbelief at their mortgage bill hitting the stratosphere. Families in overcrowded and damp flats with landlords ramping up rents and ignoring pleas for repairs. I see it in my surgeries, on the streets, and in our A&E. And I know that you do too. And let's be clear, the Tories have made the cost of living crisis far worse. They can blame everyone but themselves, but they won't get away with it. We won't let them get away with it. Whenever Rishi Sunak takes a dip in the heated swimming pool at his manor house, takes a trip in his private helicopter, takes a sip from his £180 coffee cup, do you really think he's worrying about his gas bill or his weekly shop? The Tories don't care, because they are out of touch and simply don't get it. Now, I know the Tory civil war is endlessly entertaining. It's tempting to reach for the popcorn and sit there and watch it all unfold. Whenever Johnson's people attack Sunak's people, and Nadine Dorries, whenever she pops up on the TV to slam her own leader, and yet another Tory MP announcing they're quitting. But surely Britain deserves better than this. We're in crisis. Not just prices, but the climate crisis, the crisis of inequality, the crisis facing Britain in the post-Brexit world. And in a crisis, we need leaders, not clowns. And all we see is the Tory circus making fools of us. Nowhere is the crisis more keenly felt than in the NHS. I see it every day. Queues in A&E, NHS staff in tears of frustration, a system powered by compassion but pushed to the edge, patients crying at rock bottom, parents begging for help for their children, but the cavalry unable to come. Emergency service workers took more than 1 million sick days because of poor mental health last year. Across the NHS, 6 million days are lost each year to mental health. And we all know this would be much higher without our unions supporting staff. No one's work should make them anxious and ill. Everyone should have rewarding and fulfilling work, including the NHS workers who bring us into this world and hold our hands as we leave it. And there will be people in this hall who have been made ill because of their work. People whose mental health and well-being has been damaged because of stress, workload, and lack of resources. This is the greatest generation of NHS workers, the people who got us through COVID at huge personal cost. Many gave their lives to save others. You will all know people in the caring services who sacrificed themselves to save others as well. I remember the carers helping me and my little girls wave to my dad in his care home. It still pains me today that we were not allowed to visit during the pandemic, and like many of you will know in here, when you have a parent with dementia and you can't see them for a year, you worry that you've lost those most precious moments, those last memories, those last points of connection. And the carers were his family for so long. I remember the NHS staff I saw lying on ventilators when I worked in the intensive care unit in hospitals. People like you and I, who'd gone in to save lives, but it cost them their lives. We held the hands of people taking their final breaths with family not allowed to visit. It was us who provided solace to those terrified people. It was you and the people that you support. And now we know, as the country suffered, the Tories partied. This week, the COVID inquiry has begun, and the true scale of suffering will be recorded, and the true scale of Tory mismanagement will be investigated, and at last we will hear the truth. Thank you. The next Labour government will rescue and rebuild the NHS. Keir Starmer has made it one of his 5 missions for government. We will make the NHS fit for the future, investing in expanding its workforce and implementing reforms to modernise and renew it. Every year in early July, we celebrate the founding of the NHS, what Nye Bevan called the most civilised thing in the world. But things have changed since 1948. We have seen breathtaking advances in medicine, in technology, in social attitudes too. The NHS of tomorrow must remain true to its founding principles, treatment at the point of need. But it is so important that we tackle the root causes of ill health: poverty, poor housing, polluted air, unhealthy food, overwork and stress. We need a system which prevents ill health, which allows us all to live longer lives and be healthier for longer, no matter our social class or what we do for a living. We must end the scar of health inequalities, which mean that poor people die decades before affluent ones. There's an issue that was a footnote at the founding of the NHS, but it's now top of the page, and that's mental health. We are in the depths of a mental health crisis, with adults at crisis point, waiting more than 5.4 million hours in accident and emergency last year. Nearly 400,000 children currently waiting for treatment. These will be our children, children of people that we know and love, waiting desperately for that care. Parents are told it might be months or years before their child gets treatment for their anxiety, their depression, their suicidal thoughts or self-harm. If a child is self-harming or has a life-threatening eating disorder, they cannot wait for months or years. Their families cannot wait for months or years. Parents are taking time off to be on suicide watch for their own children. And the system means that mental illness has to get worse and worse before there's an intervention. So, what will a Labour government do about it? We need to speed up diagnosis and treatment. Just like cancer, just like sepsis, the longer we leave a mental health condition, the worse it gets. It's not rocket science, we know that. Delay costs people their well-being, costing their families peace of mind, and of course it costs the taxpayer more to treat more acute conditions after months and years of delay. The argument for prevention, for early intervention, for speedy diagnosis and timely treatment simply cannot be disputed. Labour will guarantee treatment within a month for all that need it. Better for patients, better for the NHS. Next, we need a tough new target for delivery. Something for the whole system to drive for, something for the voters to truly judge us on. Labour will recruit thousands of new staff so that we can meet this target and deliver treatment within a month. We will reach out to our young people to give the next generation the support they so desperately need, so they have a feeling of hope when they look into their future. Achieving this by putting an open access mental health hub for children and young people in every single community, providing early intervention drop-in services. I know from talking to young people, this is desperately needed. We will stop mental health policy being placed in a silo. It's all interconnected. The economy is not an abstract concept, it is people. You as trade unionists know that better than anyone. So the next Labour government will bring in long-term, whole-government planning for improving mental health outcomes, mental health in all policies. And finally, Labour ministers will allocate mental health its fair share of funding as the economy grows and as resources allow. And for starters, we will close tax loopholes, putting the country's mental health first. Good mental health is a right for everyone, and the first job of a Labour government is to remove preventable pain and avoidable disease from the lives of our citizens. And in delivering this plan, I know that UNISON and the wider union movement will be our partners and allies in this. Just as the unions and Labour work to deliver the Open University, the national minimum wage, and record patient satisfaction in the NHS. Only Labour is a party of working people. It's in our name. We will work with the unions, strengthen workers' rights, deliver the economic growth that will fund our public services, and crucially, ensure that growth is shared, not hoarded. And we will place internationalism back at the heart of government. I've worked as a doctor in Palestinian refugee camps. I've trained doctors and taken medical aid to Ukraine. I've treated HIV patients in Kenya. And I know that we cannot live apart from the world. We must be an open country, welcoming to refugees, celebrating the immigrants who live, work and study here. And just remember the Windrush generation, the people from across Africa and Asia who built the NHS. Britain must be part of an interconnected global village, not an isolated island with a drawbridge up. The Tories may be imploding, but the election is not a done deal. Voters are making their minds up. Labour has an electoral mountain to climb, but climb it we must. UNISON and the trade unions have been steadfast in opposing Tory dogma and exposing Tory lies. You have been ceaseless champions for fairness and justice. You have been a beacon of hope when all seems dark. You are a true friend to Labour, and I'm proud to count myself a true friend of UNISON. I truly believe better days are ahead, that love conquers hate, and that hope can triumph over fear. But the struggle continues. So Christina, colleagues, conference, I know we're all up for the fight. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well done, and thank you, Rosanna Tenner. Rosanna, thank you very much. That was such an on-point speech, inspirational, and we really, truly thank you for your time, for taking time out to come and address us today. Thank you. See you later. Okay, thank you, Conference. Conference, Dr. Neville Lawrence, OBE, is the father of murdered teenager Stephen Lawrence. The tireless campaigning by Dr. and Baroness Lawrence resulted in the conviction of the son's killers 18 years after the crime had taken place. Through their bringing about change in the double jeopardy laws, their work led to the groundbreaking Macpherson judicial inquiry into the police investigation into Stephen's death. The Macpherson's inquiry into the death of Stephen was the first to officially conclude that the Metropolitan Police were institutionally racist. UNISON was the only union to submit evidence and highlight institutional racism in the Metropolitan Police. In the past year, Dr. Lawrence has spoken out against institutional racism, misogyny and homophobia in the Metropolitan Police following Louise Casey's report, stating that the lack of change over the past 30 years disrespected his family's loss. In the year of the Black Worker, and in memory of the last 30 years of your loss of Stephen, we are so proud to be able to present Neville with honorary membership of UNISON. We're humbled and honoured. We are humbled and honoured that Neville is joining UNISON's family. Christina, please can I ask that you present Neville's honorary membership? If you could please take the floor. Can we be joined? Can I also call Kevin Manu, National Chair of the National Black Members Committee, and Gloria Mills, if you could participate in the photograph, please.
Conference, thank you. Can I just say it's a huge honour and a privilege for me to be able to present this to Neville. I know there's a long history of UNISON working with you and with Doreen, and it's a huge honour for us that you will now have honorary membership of UNISON. So thank you. want to say a few words.
I'm a little bit nervous this morning. Thank you, UNISON, for the honorary member of UNISON. This is an absolute, what to say, life-changing situation for me. From the staying of my son, Stephen, was murdered. The black members came to my house one morning and said to me, "We will help you. We need you to get involved in the union." And I remember when I just came to this country, in order to get to work in those days, if you didn't have a union card, you couldn't get through those gates. And here I was again, going to the unions to try and help me to get the people who had murdered my son convicted. I remember the black workers printed some leaflets and were told that there was going to be a conference in Blackpool. We went and picketed the seats the morning before the conference started, because the man came the night and said to us, "If you come to the conference, there'll be members of different unions inside that conference, and they will take your requests all over England. And so it would be better for you to go to the conference and tell the conference what has happened to your son." So we did that. Here I'm standing here now 30 odd years later, and I'm standing here because of you and all the other different unions who've been with us over the past 30 years, which we have just celebrated. One of the things I've said to people in the early days, I as a person did not realize what racism was until I came to this country. I knew there was differences between races, but I didn't know hatred could be so bad that you would see an innocent person standing at a bus stop, waiting to go home, and then decide to kill him. My life has been turned upside down. And again, I'm saying to you, without the help of all the different unions who've been by the side of my family, maybe I wouldn't be standing here to receive this honorable membership. Again, I'm saying to you, thank you very much for being with us, and I hope you continue to support my family. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Neville.